Okay, guys, well, it seems that the International Space Station is now having some issues that's caused it to shut down some of their systems. And this is being reported on news.com.au. And I just want to bring attention to this because we have to remember that this is the mouthpiece for the establishment, because news.com.au is actually owned by News Limited, which is Murdoch and the gang. And we know that their lips are firmly attached to the establishment's asshole. So, therefore, whenever they are releasing information, and especially information in regards to what NASA is, releasing, then I'm always interested. And I'm always taking it with that perception as well, as they want me to know this information for a reason. Now, I have been on YouTube since 2011. In fact, this is when it all really started unfolding, with space weather really accelerating, and a lot of interesting and unusual things started taking place. And their storyline wasn't adding up. And during the time that I've been on YouTube since 2011, there have been many times that the International Space Station has had some problems. And as soon as we see that the International Space Station is reporting issues, the Hopi prophecies get rolled out. Now, back when this first came to my attention, about the ninth and last sign being the dwelling place in the heavens, falling with a great crash, I, also thought that it could have been perhaps that it was the ISS falling out of orbit. Now, there's a few reasons that this could actually be what the Hopi were talking about. But since I've got this other information, I now know that it's not. But in saying that, it still is a big part of it. And this is how the universe plays things out like this. So, the International Space Station will indeed crash to Earth, because all of the space weather is changing up there. We are being permeated with an abundance of ether. And so, the physics that they depended upon to keep these things up there is no longer relevant, and this is why we're seeing a lot of them falling out of the sky. And this brings me to the information that I found in 2011 about a Boeing whistleblower. And this Boeing whistleblower was relaying information that he overheard in regards to the changes that were happening within the space weather, and that it was causing the satellites to fall, because it was changing the atmosphere and the conditions in which they were orbiting our planet, and it was compressing and resulting in their orbits lowering to the point where some of them just can't sustain an orbit. Susan Joy Renison is another scientist that reports that NASA, she has some inside information, and it's not really even inside information because it's available if you go seeking it. But some of these people like Susan Joy Renison, who have a background, a university degree, can access these scientists at NASA who report to her that they do have satellites up there that they call zombie satellites because they've lost control of it. And this was all playing into this information that became available in 2011. So we knew that the satellites were starting to fall, and indeed they have been. They have been falling. And a lot of these incoming objects, we have to understand, could be some of these satellites, because they won't report on them unless they absolutely have to. But there have been a few that they've been a bit worried about, so they have reported on them, and then they've just disappeared and they've never really found where they want, and nobody ever hears about them. So, as I said, whenever the International Space Station has a bit of an issue, the Hopi prophecy is brought out. This has happened before, and I've looked at it due to this. But now that we've got more information, I can look at this Hopi prophecy and understand that this may be an element of it, because because the ether is now changing the space weather, then it's causing the orbiting of the satellites and the International Space Station to have issues. So yes, that can be a factor in the Hopi prophecies, but I've got a feeling the way that this is being, you know, published, that it's almost like they want us to believe that this is the situation. So I'm just going to look at this with interest, but as I've said, I've seen that the space station has had issues before. So I'm just going to continue to observe what happens and not really pay too much into it as yet, until, we see what comes of this situation and whether they get everything back online. But in the meantime, it's actually brought this Hopi prophecy up again. So I'd really like to go through this with you again. And now that I've got this new information, let's see if we can shine a different light on this prophecy and try and see what the Hopi were, trying to tell us. Now, the Hopi, like all of the races, have descended in consciousness. And so we have to be mindful of that when we're looking at the information, that sometimes there's going to be small discrepancies, but we can pick out the core of the information that seems to match again and again with all the other information that we see in all the other different cultures around the world. And so we even need to look at this when we look at numbers. Now, even though if we read some scripture and the number's 60, we need to bring it back to the 6 as well and understand that even if it's 60, it is a facet of the number 6, but the root of the number is 6, and the number 6 is the material manifested from the mental, onto the physical. I mean, this is also the material, as in our bodies, which is what 666. So do you understand? So even when we see 60 in any verse, or any of those numbers that have that core number, we need to pay attention. And so, this is pretty much what we have to do with all of this information. Have a look at the same core parts of the storyline that continue to repeat themselves. And now that we have more information, try and understand and put together more pieces of the puzzle so it makes sense to us. So I'm going to read the Hopi prophecy, and then as we're reading it, go through it and see how we can understand it now that, as I've said, we've got more information about all of who we are and the cycles of the universe that we exist within, the real cycles, and not only the physical plane, the ethereal plane that they, forgot to tell us about, and it's been there all along but unrecognized because we were ignorant to it. And now we're not. If we're, understanding the information as it's being revealed to us, then we shouldn't be ignorant of this ethereal plane, and so we should understand it better, and we should be able to now read the prophecy with this new information in mind. Okay, so let's read the prophecy. Emergence to the fifth world. The end of all Hopi ceremonialism will come when a Kachina removes his mask during a dance in the plaza before uninitiated children. For a while there will be no more ceremonies, no more faith. The Urabai will be rejuvenated with its faith and ceremonies, making the start of a new cycle of Hopi life. And so the uninitiated children are the ignorant. And they are unaware of, the Kachina removing his mask. And, they also have no faith in who they are. Faith doesn't only come in being on your knees to God or what the, religious institution want you to think of as God. It comes from faith in yourself. Do you understand that faith in yourself is faith in God, but it actually emanates from you? So the belief in your own divinity, solidifies the belief in the Creator and that connection that you have to Source. And this is why when you have a full understanding of who you are, you can actually be a conduit of that energy, of the higher energies, and transmuting them on the lower plane with the lower, denser energies. And so this is, basically what we have to start understanding and having faith in again is ourselves. Stop looking outside of ourselves. Start trusting our instincts. Our faith in ourselves is our instincts. Our gut tells us something, but the collective is saying something different. Courage is to follow the gut, and this is what is being asked of us at these times, and it's not easy. And so this is why we find everyone having challenges as we all work through this, journey that each of us has individually with our experience on the physical plane. Because even though we're part of a collective, we're still all experiencing this individually as well. And so this is all part of understanding who we are, and being initiated is that understanding of thyself. Anyway, let's continue on. World War III will be started by those peoples who first revealed the light, the divine wisdom or intelligence. In the other old countries, India, China, Islamic nations and Africa, the United States will be destroyed, land and people, by atomic bombs and radioactivity. Now, that actually brings up images of Jesus Christ being blown to bits by an atomic bomb, and it's an art piece that the Vatican have. I don't know, that just come to mind then. But it does seem that that strong indication of this event taking place is also present elsewhere. So, however, as the Hopi say, those that remember the original teachings, remember thyself, remember who they are, will not be affected by the coming of the purifier. And so this is all a part of the purifying too, because remember, the purifying, when we have a radioactive event happen on our planet and everyone's like, oh, for billions of years it's going to be radioactive. Well, the sun can change the radioactive matter on our planet at any time and neutralize it. That's actually factually, scientifically verifiable, okay? So please understand we have to start thinking outside of that little box that they've only ever allowed us to, actually exist within. This is also why we're having all these meltdowns at these nuclear facilities where these storage containers are leaking. The radioactive matter is changing, okay, because of the changing sun. There's studies that are already showing this, which is why you can't depend on decay rates in carbon anymore and, carbon dating. So, this is happening and this will happen. And they've actually even found bodies of people in India that have had really high levels of radiation that they cannot they cannot explain it all. They can't understand it. And this is because these events happen to us continuously. Think of it this way. The Creator doesn't put anything in the toolbox, in the sandbox that we're given that's going to destroy Him or the Creator, creation, Mother Earth. This is just how creation is allowed to play out its experience. And so there are many cycles that humanity goes through where it discovers radioactive material and for the detriment of us. And the land is purified again. And so we've got to understand that when we understand who we truly are, there is no reason to have fear. And that's why when you understand the original teachings, you won't be touched by the purifier, because you understand who you are. So that's why it's really important and why I put these teachings out, guys, because that's more important than any of the other information that you're ever going to receive, is how you understand yourself and your place in the universe. Okay, and that's a really solid base that you're coming from, because that's going to count in what's coming, because it's about to get crazy, really crazy. Lots of psyop and lots of really crazy stuff unfolding at a really accelerated rate. And so you want to really have a solid understanding of who you are and stand in that, so you can, fare better through the times that we're about to experience. And so this is why, it's really important that we understand all of this information that's been hidden from us, that they know this. This is why they're insane. This is why nobody could understand why they're like, almost on a kamikaze suicidal mission, It's because they know they're shooting their way out. They know there is no turning back. They partied hard at our expense, guys. Okay? We've been suckered. That's it. Right until the very end where they know that that's it for them, but they sold their soul and they thought it was worthwhile. And they know there is no hell. They'll just get wiped from existence. Okay? And that's it. But, this is all part of creation that happens continuously in the cycle. So please don't look at this information and feel fear, okay? You need to actually look at it in a way where you are empowered and understand it's just a part of creation as well, okay? And as long as you're a good soul, you live forever, basically. So you don't have to worry. Just don't be an asshole. Be a good soul and have faith in who you are. That's pretty much what it takes. And it's really hard in lower consciousness when you're really attached to the physical to do that, and the programming's completely different. The programming has been completely opposite. Not to trust your gut, to trust your mind, to trust what it's telling you. And your mind is repeating their programming. That's why it's hard to only trust your mind, because you don't know what programming you're only trusting, or what it's, consciously, what's consciously coming to you. So it's best to go with your gut first. And, if all of the collective are going in an opposite way collectively, but your gut's telling you separately, then that's when you have to follow your gut and stand in that. And that's when you will see through times like these, atomic events that, they say in this prophecy are going to unfold. But they go on to say that the Hopi and their homeland will be preserved as an oasis to which refugees will flee. Bomb shelters are fallacy. It is only materialistic people who seek to make shelters. Those who are at peace in their hearts already are in great shelter of life. So again, the Hopi is showing us that it's our hearts. Our hearts are illuminating our path. Now let's remember the path of the hermit and how it's the heart that illuminates the way. Because when you know thyself, you're actually accessing the right path to take you to where you will be sheltered, okay, by Nut, by the Creator, by the angels, by the ethereal, by all of those elements that will guide you, but it all comes from, the heart. This is why they say the heart's important. It's not this fake love, namaste, Facebook memes stuff, It's about knowing yourself in your heart. That's what understanding how important the heart is. And from that understanding, then love comes, because you understand everything. And how can you not love creation when you understand it? How can you not? And so this is what we have to reconnect with and find our hearts again and find our love. And understand real love, not the stuff that they've made us think love is, which is just the surface stuff that doesn't really go very deep, But the real love is the love that we feel when we're connected to our hearts, when we understand who we are. And so I love that they're even saying this in the prophecy here. And that there is no shelter for evil, because, the physical is now leaving as the ethereal starts to permeate more and more. So they are losing grip. And again, if we go and look at the card number 16, which is the Tower, we see that the physical is crumbling, okay? And 1 and 6 are 7, so that card is attached to the ethereal, so showing us that we can really only transform and transmute into the ethereal once the physical has crumbled. And sometimes that's not easy, sometimes that's painful, but with the pain comes the healing. So this is how the universe, basically, works within everything. I mean, it's really beautiful when you have an understanding for the truth instead of the lies that they've sold us, because they've taken our power away, because they've taken our understanding of who we are away. So we have no idea who we are. And so we're at their mercy. And they've made us believe we're ineffective and we're lacking. And this is why I say all of this alien stuff, is just more psyop to do the same thing and look outside of ourselves and think that only aliens could have built these great civilizations or done anything this, absolutely amazing, because we could not possibly be responsible. And once again, it's not true. It's because they want to, make us look outside of ourselves. Now, if we remember the Mystery Teachings notes that I did, and I'm going to actually put this under the Mystery Teachings notes, because I don't know if a lot of people that follow this International Space Station story will understand this information. So I might be going a little bit over people's heads that haven't been actually exposed to this material. So let's bring it back to now the Mystery Teachings research notes, where we looked at the 13 tribes. Now I've got more information that I want to bring to you that also ties this into the Maya and the Andean, and I've got pretty pure information from Andean elders called the Kiro that I can give you that I've found confirming everything that I've just been finding as well. So I can't wait to bring you that in that. So once again, though, this ties into that information because, look, they're saying that this is the prophecy that I actually was thinking about and I had read, and I did remember this very important part of it, and that was that those who take no part in the making of world division by ideology are ready to resume life in another world. Be they black, white, red, or yellow race, they are all one, brothers. Now remember that I was saying that the red, white, yellow, and black races all have the 13 tribes, the 2 messiahs, and the 12 disciples. Okay, but it's really, the 24 disciples and the 2 messiahs in each group. Okay, because we have to times everything by 2 because they're actually also 2 souls. So this is also fitting into this information and confirming once again that the Hopi say that there were 4 races. Okay, and then it goes on to say the war will be a spiritual conflict with material matters. Material matters will be destroyed by spiritual beings who will remain to create one world and one nation under one power, that of the Creator. Okay, spiritual conflict, this is what the apocalypse is. Okay, as I said, it's the dropping of the veils. It's the ether returning and us existing in a more ethereal plane rather than where we are now in a very physical plane, in lower consciousness. And only those that remember who they are will remain to create the one world and one nation under one power. And that is because we all understand who we are. There is no division. Because the division is the psyop, is the programming, guys. That's what we have to understand. Do you not understand that we are all great and that every race has greatness, has a divine line that illuminates the collective? And we don't need to fight each other, okay, because we've all been enslaved together from those who seek to keep us bonded down into the physical, in bondage. Again, I'm going to bring it back to the tarot because the Rider-Waite, the symbolism's just awesome because it just tells you a story like that. And so you just have to look at the material card of the devil, which is 15, 1 and 5, 6. Okay, and that's pretty much what you can look at mentally as well as physically and everything else, okay? Think about that mentally, being trapped down here, only thinking that you're physical. Okay, only thinking that this is the conscious level that mankind will only ever be at, nor will only ever be able to do, is express ourselves technologically and advance ourselves in that way. Don't you understand that that's how they keep us back in the physical? So all of these people that share these new age things, I just end up blocking them from Facebook because you're stuck in thinking that into the physical. So you really have to get out of the physical and get into the ethereal if you want to understand this information that I'm relaying to you. If you're stuck in the physical and you can't understand it, then, you need to go and get an understanding for it. That's all I can really say, because I can't do it for anybody. And I can't even help you. You can't write to me experiences you've had on DMT or anything like that, and I give you some answer that's going to unlock everything for you. Do you not understand that? People have to understand that they're here to help themselves by illuminating their own path, through the path of the hermit, through the path of the heart. It's all an individual journey, guys. We're all the individual little tributaries going back to source, okay? All responsible for our own little river. Back to source. No one else is going to do the river for us, okay? And when we get that, and we get that we can't hang off the words of these various gurus and wait for them to tell us how to explain life, and we finally get it all and we can just go to sleep at night and it's all explained to us. No. It's about seeking thyself, and if you don't do that, you won't have your power. So that's why I'll keep just really repeating that, and this is just amazing information that I'm rediscovering, because I'd actually only read this before I started the video, guys, so I'm actually coming back and reading the other information that I hadn't read since the last time I saw this ISS connection with the Hopi prophecies. So anyway, this is probably going to be a long video. You may want to go and put pause on and go and make a cup of tea, guys, while I continue. Okay, now this is really good, guys, because I'm starting to find this information here, and I've just been reading this book called Keepers of the Ancient Knowledge about the Andean elders, and I found information again that I had looked at last year that's becoming relevant now, and I'm really looking forward to bringing this as well, because this is just reconfirming again what the Hopi is saying. So it's really in our face. Now they go on to say that time is not far off. It will come when the blue star Kachina dances in the plaza and removes his mask. He represents a blue star, far off and yet invisible, which will make its appearance soon. Some Hopi spokesperson suggests that the Hailbop, was the blue star. Now, I don't know, as I said, the Hopi and all the other elders have descended in consciousness, so we have to be careful about what they're identifying as what they thought the blue Kachina was, because they didn't know about Ison back then. And they didn't know about Elenin and any of these other comments. They were only working with the information they had at hand. So let's have a look, though, at what else the elders had said about what was coming. So they were saying that the fourth world shall end and the fifth world will begin. And the elders everywhere know the signs over many years have been fulfilled. And so these are the ones that are left. The first sign, we were told the coming of the white-skinned man, the Pahana, but not living like Pahana, men who took the land that was not theirs and who struck their enemies with thunder. Okay, now the Pahana guys, are the Messiahs and the divine group. Okay, the 12 tribes. All right, so we have to understand that that's kind of been lost a little bit. But the Pahana, the white-skinned, now, I don't think that the white-skinned is Jesus visiting the planet like a lot of people have misinterpreted. When you have a look at the lot of mythology and the information, there always seems to be halos, and there always seems to be light emanating from the head of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and all of the apostles and the saints. Now, when I was reading this information from the Andean elders, the Peruvian elders, and that information, they were also saying about when the divine ones return, and I'll bring you this information when I bring you the Mystery Teachings notes, but they were basically saying that these divine ones had this glow, this light around them, okay? So I'm wondering if that's just been lost in the translation, that the Pahana has been mistaken for white skin because they were saying the Pahana glowed white. Now I'm just trying to understand, why that theme keeps reoccurring when I know that there's different races that have these divine groups. And we've also seen pictures of Jesus and Mary Magdalene and they're Negroes, and we've seen all this other information anyway of, different cultures showing this. So it's it is, I think, because of this halo effect. Now, if we look at hermetics and we look at the law of correspondence, that means that what happens on the macro can happen on the micro. So if we look at how planets can get halos, okay, then we need to understand that we can get halos too, because we're actually a microcosm of planets out there. I mean, this is how it all works with Mother Earth, you know, because Mother Earth gets a halo when she has a geomagnetic storm. She gets halos on both her poles, as do all the other planets. There's plenty of other occurrences. You can go onto a Google Images and look for halos on planets' poles, or halos on Saturn, halos on Jupiter. All of the planets have been displaying them lately as well, so that's very interesting. Now, as I said, if we use the Hermetic law of correspondence, then we can understand that this can also happen on that level with us. So it's not too out of the understanding of science when we're looking at science and the sacred sciences that this could occur. So I'm just bringing it out there as the information is showing me. Okay, even if it's information we haven't actually seen before, we still have to acknowledge it if the information seems to be, coming up again and verifying itself consistently across culture. Okay, so the second sign. Allow to see the coming of the spinning wheels filled with voices, covered wagons, okay? Yeah, okay, I get that. That pretty much sits right with me. Third sign, strange beasts like buffalo with great longhorns will overrun the land. Yes, the longhorn cattle. Fourth sign, the land will be crossed by snakes of iron. Railroad tracks, yes, makes sense. Fifth sign, land will be crisscrossed with giant spider webs. Power and telephone lines. Yep, that also fits. Sixth sign, the land shall be crisscrossed with rivers of stone that make pictures in the sun. Now this is, roads and the mirages, and so I suppose that this is when, after we have the telegraph wire, we get all the roads that connect us physically, and then we have cars so that we can travel long distances, and our lives become more complicated because we have more cause and effect happening within our lives now, because we've extended our boundaries of experience on the physical realm. Okay, so that would be significant. I find that would be something that would change the consciousness of mankind. You know, and can you notice that all of these are changing the consciousness of mankind as well, like as in food, as in, transport. Again, we've got communication, and then we've got roads. And so, even though back here we had transport, we were reliant on the establishment for our transport, and then this came down to an individual level. And so we can see that we're actually evolving, and then we come to the seventh sign, and then this is when the sea is turning black. Now, I'm going to say, because of this other information I've found about the heart of sky and these alignments between the sun and Venus, Venus, the sun, and yes, the heart of sky, and I've just done this previous video. I am really wondering now whether this is the BP oil disaster, because that really was a shift in consciousness when people got really shocked by an environmental event that we all knew impacted a huge area. And in our consciousness, we all knew that this was really pretty full on. And I know that this is when I pretty much started paying attention again. That was it for me. Around that time, it was like, yeah, they've really fucked up there with what they've done. And they've done something that's really, really, not good for Mother Earth, because they cannot shut off this well. But I think in a way that this may all have been designed on some level as well. I think I have to factor that in there too, and I will factor that in, because on some levels, remember how I said that we can influence, both ways, and I think that we had an influence there as well in some way. There was an agenda with the BP oil spill, but this also played into an awakening there. And of course, now we're experiencing the die-offs, but this isn't just because of the sea turning black. We're experiencing it because, Fukushima, as well as the solar activity, the radiation, when we get those big blasts of gamma ray bursts and radiation, The fish and the birds can't handle it because they exist more in the ethereal. And so because of that, it just overwhelms their senses and they just die in mass. And this is why we see certain species being affected when others aren't, because it'll be a certain setup of their sensory, you know, manifestation, physical kind of attributes that probably become more prone to it than others. I mean, I'm only trying to rationalize this, in a logical way. Anyway, let's move on. I'm getting really, thirsty now. I don't think I've done a video this long before, guys, so I hope you're still sticking with me. Okay, so we're at number 8. Okay, now this is the one I wanted to show you, all right? The 8th sign, because, now this is number 8. And maybe we should really look at this 6th sign, this 7th sign, and this 7th sign a little bit more ethereally, because I think they're matching up a little bit with what we know about our number codes if you really do look at it. I am going to say, though, I am going to go just from what I'm seeing about the BP oil disaster, that I do believe there was an element of the physical within that. And, sometimes we can find the physical within the ethereal anyway, and it does play out on the different planes of causation. But I think the Hopi really did want to show us that this was on perhaps a more ethereal level, that this event did take place. And that was the causation, because we did need to experience this awakening. But I do want to move from there. But the only reason I say that is because of where number 8 is, the position of 8, and then what that is connected to. Because a lot of people thought that this was connected to the hippies. And what it says is, you will see many youth who wear their hair long, like our people, come and join the tribal nations to learn our ways and wisdom. Now, people said that that was the hippies, right? And they made special mention of the hair being long. Now, the Hopi did not leave this prophecy and just put long hair because it was a fashion statement. And basically, back in the 60s and 70s, long hair was a fashion statement. And then that doesn't really fit in with the oil spill either, okay, in BP. I mean, it comes afterwards. So it's never really fit for me. And that's why I've kind of never really paid attention, because from that time on, it went really into that part where it didn't kind of fit with anything else. Now it makes sense because I've got more information. And so this is why I've done this long drawn out video. And those of you that are the students of the mystery teachings have hopefully hung on to this far and, seen where this is all going. So we're on to the 8th sign. We're now up to the hair that the Hopi had to mention in this prophecy. And they're talking about coming and joining the tribal nations. Now, I'm taking that as they are learning the original tribal ways, the original teachings, the original teachings from each of the tribes, which are the 13 tribes, of Israel. Once again, let's remember that it's easy to misinterpret this information as we are losing it in lower consciousness. And because then it goes on to say to learn our ways and wisdom. Well, that's the tribal ways of wisdom, and the tribes are the ones with the information because they are the ones gifted with divinity that then are the conduits for illumination. Now, the reason that I think the hair plays a really important part is because we see hair mentioned all the time in a lot of different myths and a lot of different religious beliefs, all focused around the hair. Mary Magdalene, if you have a look at Mary Magdalene with long hair, you'll find a lot of information about that. You'll also find in the Freemasonry information that Saturn is attached to the hair, and this means that Saturn is attached to time and that hair is attached to time and the ethereal. Now, why I say that is because Saturn is showing he's in the ethereal. Kronos here, who's ruled by Saturn, is shown that he's in the ethereal by his wings. And he's also got the timekeeper here. The foundations are crumbling, and the divine female intellect is now once again understanding the information, and we can measure this divinity with the hair because the hair is attached to the ethereal. And this is where we see Samson and the hair, when the hair was cut, losing his power. And the Hopi, they even done actual experiments on the Hopi where they cut their hair and they sent one, you know, guy off to do some tracking, or a group off to do tracking that had cut hair, and they had a group that didn't have their hair cut do the tracking, and the group that had their hair cut, they were lost and did not have the same skills as they had when they had their hair. And this is because our hair is attached to our ethereal body, and so it gives us added information, environmental information that we're not consciously aware of. Okay, a lot of this happens on a subconscious level as well. And you know, when we're moving into the ethereal, we're moving more into the subconscious level that's been out of access from us, that we could only access through DMT and through all of this other shamanistic, you know, ceremonial ways that they try to access it. But in times of higher consciousness and when the ethereal returns, we are able to, you know, be more in line with our subconscious as well. And so we can see this in all this Freemasonry symbolism again. We see the hair, okay, and the breaking of the foundations of the physical, moving into the ethereal. And you know, we see that this is also representing civilization, because civilization represents the physical, guys, okay, as well, because that's what we do when we're in the physical. As little humans, we build like little ants, you know, because that's what we think we are. A little ant's going to build technology and build stuff, you know, but really we don't have to do it that way. We just forget. And of course, you know, there's an agenda, as I've said, that keeps us away from that information. And so there's images like this in the Thy Way Seek group that you can access as well. And this is what I was speaking about in the other information in the video about this, where God is actually using that wheel, and you can't quite see this because it's just a little bit cut off for this picture. If I just see if I can make that smaller. See? Damn it. Bloody Windows 8. Anyway, you can just imagine there's a cloud just above there, and that's his hand, and he's influencing below. So I just wanted to show that, you know, there is that factor we have to take into account, even though there's cycles and there's other things that we can depend upon. There's also that factor that we have to understand exists, that's taken out of our hands, and that's the Creator's influence. But anyway, so that's the 8th sign, okay? The ethereal is coming back, and we're going to see this in the divine ones. Okay, the tribal nations returning to their wisdom and the ways, remembering their ways, remembering their wisdom. Then the 9th and last sign, okay? Here we go. You've nearly waited 45 minutes. My throat's, you know, nearly ran out. I hope it's worth it. Okay, guys, this is where we have to imagine that the ethereal and the physical are now meeting again. And so, in fact, it's the ethereal dwelling place in the heavens that the ethereal beings exist in, including the Creator, that merges with Earth. And when this happens, it happens with the physical tumbling. Okay? There is a big event, an apocalypse, where that causes the physical to have to be destroyed, and then from the ashes, the phoenix rises. Okay? And so that's all tying into that. So, okay, I can't believe I've done a 45-minute video, but I think I've solved this Hopi prophecy ISS thing once and for all, according to me. I mean, you guys may be happy to go with other, you know, kind of conclusions. But for me and the information I've been looking at, and now revisiting this again, and as I said, I'm going to bring more information about the Kiro, the Quiro, and the Andean elders and what they say about this. And this is pretty pure information, which is why I'm really pretty happy to have followed my gut instinct and bought this book last year. But I'll bring you that in the next video, and that will be coming soon, guys. So hang in there, and let me get together all the information I want to show you in that video, and I'll be back. Alright guys, so I'll leave it here, and I'll link everything underneath. And as always, peace out.